Alright, hello everybody. Friendly Red here, reporting in once again to discuss some upcoming games on my radar. 2025 is coming to a close, and with this year's conclusion drawing near, new game releases are also starting to wind down as well. There's still a few big releases to come, and in particular, November is looking to be quite the exciting month for the Switch 2, with some other neat looking games to go alongside the big exclusives releasing for Nintendo's shiny new handheld. Before we get into it, as always, the usual disclaimer. Please keep in mind that release dates are always subject to change, and what's presented in this video may be out of date by the time it is posted. Now, let the talking about new games commence. Kicking things off on the 6th, we've got two new releases to go over, with Hyrule Warriors, Age of Imprisonment, and Unbeatable both launching that day. We'll start with Age of Imprisonment, as there's not a ton to really go over with this one, especially if you have prior experience with either of the previous Hyrule Warriors titles, Fire Emblem Warriors games, or really any of the other various Warriors games out there from other franchises. Like the prior Hyrule Warriors games, Age of Imprisonment once again puts a Zelda-themed spin on the traditional Musou formula, though this time with a focus on the story and characters from 2023's Tears of the Kingdom. Similar to how Age of Calamity acted as a prequel of sorts to Breath of the Wild, albeit a non-canon one, Age of Imprisonment will essentially act as a playable version of the memory fragments we see from Tears of the Kingdom, allowing us to experience what Zelda and the other denizens of Hyrule's past went up against during the Imprisoning War, after she was sent back to that era at the start of Tears of the Kingdom. Applying the Musou gameplay formula to these war-torn eras of Hyrule is honestly such a perfect fit, as the large enemy counts and fast, hectic hack-and-slash combat really helps sell the chaos that we only got to see glimpses of in the proper Zelda titles the Warriors games pull from. Of course, these games can be a bit on the repetitive side, but at the same time, it's pretty fun to hop in and blast through hordes of enemies, and in the case of Hyrule Warriors, it's cool to be able to play as other characters aside from Link, get to experience their own unique powers and abilities firsthand. I'm certainly looking forward to being able to play as the first king of Hyrule himself, and the coolest goat dad around, Rauru, not to mention how amazingly silly it will be to play as a Korok. Age of Imprisonment also addresses my two biggest issues I had with Age of Calamity, with regards to the story and technical performance, as not only does Age of Imprisonment look to run at a consistent 60 FPS, the story it's going to tell will be fully canon to Tears of the Kingdom, unlike the more what-if scenario Age of Calamity took with its story leading into Breath of the Wild. Ultimately, Age of Imprisonment is shaping up to be yet another fantastic entry into the Hyrule Warriors series, and even if it's more of a spin-off than actual new Zelda game, it's still cool to be getting new Zelda content in any form this early into the Switch 2's life. Hyrule Warriors, Age of Imprisonment will be releasing on Thursday, November 6th, exclusively for Nintendo Switch 2. Our other November 6th release, Unbeatable, is quite the tasty looking game, I've gotta admit. Somewhat similar to a game I covered earlier this year, Nitro Express, Unbeatable oozes with style and character, reminding me, again, of the works produced by Studio Trigger, though Unbeatable goes even further with that aesthetic, with it featuring full-on 2D animated cinematics and in-game visuals that combine hand-drawn animated sprites with stylized environments to explore, with both 2D and 3D aspects. Visually speaking, it may just be one of my favorite looking games releasing this year, but the gameplay ain't any slouch either. Described as a rhythm adventure where music is illegal and you do crimes, you'll be able to explore various locations throughout the story mode, interacting with your friends and band members, and partaking in some rhythm-based mayhem along the way. While the actual rhythm game sections themselves don't seem too different from what you may find in a game like Taiko no Tatsujin, or something like the Rock Band or Guitar Hero games, asking you to time button presses in accordance with on-screen prompts that sync up to the music, the visualization of those segments is, much like the rest of the game, on another level. The way your character performs moves, combined with the background characters and elements, and even the actual notes and lines themselves, it's all just so chaotically colorful and fun to look at. I imagine it'll be just as fun to play, too. On the topic of playing the game, there will be more to this one than just the story mode, as Unbeatable will also feature a separate arcade mode, which acts as a way to just get right into playing through the various songs in the game, of which there's going to be quite a bit of at launch, with even more coming via updates to the game as well. And if all that wasn't enough, there even seems to be little rhythm mini-games sprinkled throughout the game, seemingly inspired by what you may find in the Rhythm Heaven games. I adore the Rhythm Heaven series, so I'm always happy when other rhythm games take inspiration from them, and make their own unique little challenges and scenarios you have to overcome via the power of rhythm, with fun visuals contextualizing it all. I'm already sold on Unbeatable, and will absolutely be getting it upon its release. However, if you are unsure about the game, and would like to try it out before committing to a purchase, you're in luck, as there is not one, but two separate demos out for the game that you can try for yourself, with one that's based more around the full release for Unbeatable, and another from 2021 called Unbeatable White Label. White Label is actually a side story set within the world of Unbeatable, so if you're already thinking of playing the full release, it may be worth checking out this one, not only to tide you over until the full game is out, but to see how the story may be set up, or to see if White Label ties into the full game in any way. I'm probably going to check it out myself, and also use it as a way to get some footage for this segment too. Unbeatable will be releasing on Thursday, November 6th for PS5, Xbox Series consoles, and PC. Jumping ahead 2 weeks from Hyrule Warriors and Unbeatable, November 20th sees the release of another Switch 2 exclusive, that being Kirby Air Riders. It may have taken 22 years, but we're finally getting a proper follow-up to Kirby Air Ride, and man, this is looking like a sequel done right. I mean, it's directed by Sakurai, so of course it's going to be good, but it's nevertheless impressive just how much he and his team crammed into this one. Sakurai may have been away from the Kirby series for a long time, but it's clear that he put in the work to ensure he could appease as many fans as possible, with this game housing so much from the original Kirby Air Ride, as well as numerous other Kirby games from throughout the series. Pretty much everything that was in the original Kirby Air Ride is back here for Air Riders, with all of the original courses included, in addition to the new ones for the core Air Ride mode. City Trial is also back, refined and expanded even further than what it was in the original, with the general idea and gameplay loop remaining the same as you race around a large open environment, collecting power-ups and preparing for a final challenge against the other racers, which could be one of dozens of different minigames or scenarios. Similarly, Top Ride, the top-down slot car-like racing mode, also makes a comeback from the original, again expanded upon with many more features and options. I always found Top Ride to be a fun little distraction or flavor change to mess around with back in Air Ride, but never really did much with it. It was very basic and limited in that original game, and I had cities that needed trialing. Plenty of people really like that mode though, and Sakurai knows it, so I'm glad it's gotten some more care and time put into it for Air Riders. Now appears to be more of a proper separate game mode, rather than the last-minute bonus edition it felt like in Air Ride. So we've got all the original things that made Air Ride great back here for Air Riders, Air Ride, City Trial, and Top Ride all returning and looking to be better than ever. But there's one more core game mode that Sakurai decided to throw in there as well, known as Road Trip. Road Trip essentially looks like the Kirby Air Ride version of Classic Mode from Super Smash Bros. You'll pick your character and set off on a little adventure, where you'll be able to pick different routes as you progress on your road trip, with each route representing a different challenge you'll have to complete. It could be a standard race in the Air Ride mode, a Top Ride race, or some kind of encounter or minigame challenge from City Trial. It's a cool way to combine all the different available ways to play in the game into one sampler platter of sorts, and with all the different variations and modifiers that can show up within each mode, it ensures Kirby Air Riders will have a pretty robust and infinitely replayable single-player mode, in addition to the core game modes being available for play in both single-player or multiplayer settings, both online or locally. I feel like that's a pretty decent overview of what this sequel has on offer, but keep in mind that there have been 2 separate dedicated Nintendo Directs for this game, with loads more info and details contained within. If you want to learn more specifics about the character roster, stage lineup, copy abilities, rideable machines, and more, there's quite a lot that was packed into both of them. And if you haven't viewed them already, I'd highly recommend doing so if you're interested at all in Kirby Air Riders. You'll get so much more details on what I can realistically cover here, plus it's just fun to watch Sakurai go over everything in the game, as is always the case in any presentations he, presents. Kirby Air Riders will be releasing on Thursday, November 20th, exclusively for Nintendo Switch 2. With those highlighted titles out of the way, it's time to get into the honorable mentions. Going back to November 6th, the same day Hyrule Warriors and Unbeatable release, we have the release of No Players Online. This is a neat looking adventure horror game with a pretty sweet retro aesthetic tied to it as well. The game centers around you interacting with an old computer you found that's loaded up with an abandoned FPS game you can freely explore, in addition to messing around with the operating system on the in-game computer itself, where you can sift through old files and applications that were left on it, or just play some Minesweeper. The horror in this one is also done in a way I appreciate much more than just cheap jump scares or sudden loud sounds, with a focus on liminality and a more unnerving and sinister mystery surrounding it all as you try to figure out what exactly the abandoned FPS game was meant to be. I'm looking forward to trying it out, and if it seems interesting to you, just know that there's a demo out now for PC, which is also the only platform the full game is currently set to launch on. Following that, on the same day Skyrim released 14 years ago, November 11th houses 2 honorable mentions, with both Luminous Arise and Possessors releasing. Luminous Arise comes to us courtesy of the same developers behind Tetris Effect, which to this day remains as my favorite way to play Tetris. The music and visuals in that game were mesmerizing, and it turned the simple act of playing Tetris into something truly unique and special, and perhaps a bit trippy, particularly if you played the game in VR. This all appears to remain true for Luminous Arise, with the developers taking a well-known and beloved puzzle game classic, and turning it into a visual and auditory spectacle, complete with standard and VR modes to play in, much like Tetris Effect. I've never actually played Luminous, but I've been interested in trying out the series ever since I saw Luminous Remastered. And with Arise coming out soon, it seems I'll be in for quite the first impression once I decide to pick it up. This one will be out for PS5 and PC. Possessors is our other November 11th release. coming to us courtesy of Heart Machine, the same team behind Hyper Light Drifter and Hyper Light Breaker, which I actually discussed and made a whole separate video on earlier this year. While it may not be part of the Hyper Light series of games, Possessor still has plenty of its own style and flair. And gameplay-wise, this is quite different from anything we've seen from Heart Machine, as this is a 2D side-scrolling Metroidvania, with combat inspired by platform fighters like Super Smash Bros. Or Rivals of Aether. And no doubt a very unique combination they've got going on here, but it's one that I'm intrigued by. And it doesn't hurt that the game is absolutely gorgeous too, with a beautiful blend of stylized 2D visuals and effects mixed with some 3D environments, not unlike the previously discussed Unbeatable. The illustrated character portraits in the dialogue sections look amazing too. Honestly, I would have included this one in the main highlight section, and would probably be picking this up on day one, but I figure with how close it is to both Hyrule Warriors and Unbeatable, in addition to me still working through Legend ZA and Ghost of Yote from last month, it'll probably have to wait a bit longer. Regardless, I'm very excited to play it soon, and it'll be out for both PS5 and PC. The next day, on the 12th, Winterboro will finally be releasing. So I remember initially seeing this game as part of the Xbox Summer Games Showcase from last year, and I even talked about it briefly during my news peruse video for said showcase. I thought it looked cute, and quite enjoyed the idea of being able to play as a mouse in the game, but wasn't too sure if I'd be super into it, as the game falls somewhat within the open world survival craft genre that I've kind of gotten tired of personally. I'd say somewhat within, as Winterboro isn't open world, and it doesn't seem as brutal as other games in the genre, with a focus on being a cozy, more laid-back game that you can take your time with, that just so happens to incorporate some elements of other survival craft games. I'm still unsure if it's something I'd really get into, but I suppose I can find out before the full release, as there is a demo available to try. This one will be out for Xbox One, Xbox Series consoles, and PC. Rounding out our honorable mentions, November 18th sees the release of Alloyed Collective, the next DLC expansion for Risk of Rain 2. Now, I haven't really been playing that much Risk of Rain 2 as of late, and thus am not as focused in on this expansion as I was for Survivors of the Void or Seekers of the Storm. But Risk of Rain 2 remains a superb action roguelike and a sublime co-op game to play with friends. Like with prior expansions, Alloyed Collective brings with it new playable characters, with one being new and one being a returning survivor from Risk of Rain Returns. New maps to play on, items to find, enemies to face, and bosses to overcome. All expected stuff for a Risk of Rain expansion at this point. I think the thing I and many others are concerned about is whether or not this DLC release will be as bad as the prior one, Seekers of the Storm, ended up being. The long and short of it is that it launched in a pretty buggy and unpolished state. And it was so bad that the developers effectively reworked the expansion over the course of 6 months, releasing updates to the DLC in phases to get it into the state it should have been at launch. So yeah, the prior expansion launch doesn't exactly inspire confidence for this one, but at the same time, I'm cautiously optimistic that the developers learned their lesson, and that they took the time to ensure this new DLC will be a polished, properly balanced, and complete addition to the game, and not have to spend another half a year plus after release fixing everything they initially pushed out instead. This DLC will be out for PS4, PS5, Xbox One, Xbox Series consoles, and PC, with a Nintendo Switch release also planned for a little bit later. Lastly, I just wanted to mention that Hades 2 will be getting a physical release on November 20th for Switch and Switch 2. The full release occurred back on September 25th, albeit digitally only. Since this isn't really a new release, I didn't want to add it to either the highlights or honorable mentions, but I still wanted to talk about the physical release anyways, so here we are. I haven't played any of the full version of Hades 2 yet, but I absolutely loved what I played of it when it launched in early access, and I'm sure it's going to be even better once I get into it. And this physical release on Switch 2 in particular is probably how I'll end up playing through the full game. Anyways, that should do it for the honorable mentions plus Hades 2 physical release shoutout. Let's get into wrapping this one up. And that's a wrap for November of 2025. Some great looking exclusives hitting the Switch 2 just in time for the holiday season, and alongside other releases like Unbeatable, Luminous Arise, and all the other games I did or didn't mention here, it should be a solid penultimate month for game releases this year. I'm looking forward to filling out my physical Switch 2 library with some more releases this month, and Unbeatable is probably going to end up being my go-to Steam Deck game for a bit, as it looks like it'll be perfect for pickup and play sessions, and those visuals will no doubt look amazing on the OLED display too. Combine all that with the games I'm still working through and having a blast with from last month, it's safe to say that the fun and variety on offer isn't going to be ending anytime soon. But, with all that being said, I think that'll do it for this video. If you made it to the end, I thank you for watching. Your continued viewership and support is greatly appreciated. Hope I was able to entertain, inform, and perhaps interest you in some upcoming games you may not have known about. And last, but certainly not least, as always, I'll see you next time.